Welcome to Life Stories, where the people you trust most sometimes become the ones who quietly destroy you. She came home for Christmas expecting warm hugs and homemade pie. What she found was an empty kitchen, a trembling grandfather, and a sticky note that shattered her entire life in 5 words. Her savings. Gone. Her parents. On a beach. Her brother. Missing with her future. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when silence is no longer safe, when love without boundaries becomes poison, and when one woman decides to burn down the script her family has forced her to follow for decades. Stay with us because by the end of the story, you might just find the courage to rewrite your own. Let's go back to the moment everything changed. I hadn't planned to come home for Christmas. Chicago in winter was cruel enough, but the thought of returning to the creaking house in Willow Falls where memories whispered from the walls some kind, most not made my skin tighten. But Grandpa Walter had called. Twice. And that never happened. His messages were short, almost apologetic, as if dialing my number had cost him something sacred. So I came. The first thing I noticed when I walked through the front door wasn't the smell of cinnamon pine candles my mom used to light in December. It was silence. Thick, sterile silence. And then the humming of the fridge, almost too loud in the stillness. The second thing I noticed was that they were gone. No garlands. No laughter. No holiday dinner. Just a note stuck to the refrigerator with a faded magnet that read, "Used your money for Dylan. He's your responsibility this week. We're in Cabo. Mom and Dad." The words didn't register at first. My hands went cold before my brain caught up. My money. I stared at the crumpled slip of paper as if I could will it into saying something else. Then I saw Grandpa Walter, sitting at the kitchen table under the dim light, hunched over a paper plate. A dry sandwich, white bread, no crust, barely held together by a smear of peanut butter, sat untouched in front of him. His hands trembled. Not from surprise. From exhaustion. From something deeper. "I've been eating sandwiches since Tuesday," he said without looking up. "Can't manage the stove much these days. Hands don't cooperate anymore." He was thinner than I remembered. His plaid flannel shirt hung loose on his frame, and the proud man who once fixed everything with duct tape and sheer willpower looked brittle. I hadn't seen Dylan yet, but I knew the shape of this story. I was 16 when the tides first shifted. Dad lost his job, and Mom's part-time work at the pharmacy kept lights on and not much else. While other girls saved for prom, I stocked shelves at Brighton's market and delivered newspapers before sunrise. Not because anyone asked me to. I just saw the leak in the boat and grabbed a bucket. Dylan was 11 back then. Too young to help, apparently. "He's sensitive," Mom would say, shielding him from every financial storm while I learned to budget and boil pasta 5 ways. By 19, I had scraped together enough for community college. I transferred $800 a month into what Mom called the future fund. She managed it for me. Said banks preyed on young people. I believed her. 4 years later, that future fund was supposed to take a heavy bite out of my nursing school debt. $23,000. Gone. I sank to the kitchen floor, the linoleum cold against my knees. The note crumpled in my hand. Rage burned slow and deep. Grandpa lowered himself beside me, his knee popping with the effort. He didn't say anything at first. Just patted my hand with fingers that couldn't quite hold steady. "They'll regret this, sweetheart," he said, voice low. I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night, I searched for Dylan. He wasn't in his room. Not really. His room had become a makeshift party cave, empty beer cans, a haze of something stronger clinging to the air, a new gaming console still warm, and clothes worth more than my rent. No Dylan. Just wreckage. On his nightstand, a small digital scale. Razor blades. Torn off prescription labels. A neighbor knocked the next morning. Brenda from next door, gray bob tucked into a knit cap. "Thank God you're here, Brooke," she said. "I've been worried sick about Walter. And Dylan, he's had at least 3 parties this week. Loud ones. I called your folks. They said boys will be boys. Then hung up. They weren't coming back. Not for Grandpa. Not for Dylan. Not for me. I called my best friend, Madison. She's a lawyer now, corporate litigation, but still the most grounded person I know. She told me to check my credit report. If they drained your savings, she said, you need to know what else they touched. Turns out they touched everything. The bank verified 6 months of systematic withdrawals, all authorized by my mother. The final transfer had been 3 days ago. Banks prey on young people, she'd warned. The irony sliced deeper than any knife. I made Grandpa a real meal that night. Chicken soup. He cried when I set it down. Not loud sobs, just the kind of tears that fall quietly, like they've been waiting a long time. He hadn't taken his medications in 3 days. Dylan had borrowed his car to pick them up. He never came back. I should have gone to the police then. Should have reported the theft, the negligence. But something held me back. Maybe it was the whisper of guilt. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was that tiny ember of hope that Dylan, the boy who used to cry when birds hit the window, was still buried under the mess. But that night, while I was digging through a drawer for Grandpa's pill organizer, I found something else. A bank statement. $30,000. Withdrawn last year. Labeled home renovation loan. Only the kitchen looked the same. I showed it to Grandpa. They said they'd pay me back, he whispered. Said it was just to help Dylan get back on his feet. A pause. That's what they said about your college fund, too. I couldn't breathe. My whole chest felt like it was imploding. Not just the money. The years. The trust. The belief that love came with some form of respect. It didn't end there. I found another file. Grandpa's property deed. Still in his name. Never transferred. Dylan's graduation photos. Center stage. Mine. Cropped. Forgotten. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a system. A structure. A slow bleed built on guilt, silence, and sacrifice. When Dylan finally came home, it wasn't through the front door. It was through the ER. Unconscious. Overdosed on a cocktail of Grandpa's medications and God knows what else. Found in a park restroom by a jogger. When I saw him on the hospital bed, pale and hooked to machines, my anger collapsed under the weight of something worse, grief. Not because he nearly died. But because I realized he had no idea how to live. Have you ever loved someone who kept breaking your heart? What would you do if the people you trusted the most were the ones silently ruining you? The next morning, Dylan opened his eyes and the first thing he said shattered everything I thought I knew about what came next. He blinked at the ceiling like it didn't belong to him. I didn't mean to die, Dylan said. His voice was raw, barely more than breath, like each word had to fight its way out of his chest. I didn't know what I expected when he woke up: defensiveness, maybe, or the casual arrogance he wore like armor, but not that. Not this strange, shaking honesty. I just wanted it all to shut off for a while. I sat in the plastic chair beside his hospital bed, my hands folded so tightly in my lap they'd gone numb. The hum of machines, the soft beep of his monitors, the sterile scent of antiseptic, all of it settled over us like fog. I wanted to speak, to ask how long he'd felt like this, how deep the darkness had gotten. But I couldn't find anything that didn't sound either too clinical or too broken. So instead, I whispered, "I know." And I did. Not his exact pain but the exhaustion. The ache of carrying too much without anyone noticing. The bitterness of watching the people you trusted rewrite your sacrifices into footnotes. He turned his head slowly toward me, eyes still heavy from whatever cocktail had almost killed him. "Did Mom and Dad call?" I shook my head. "Their phones are off. They're still in Cabo." He nodded once, like that answer was exactly what he expected, and somehow still disappointing. "I'm tired, Brooke," he murmured. "I'm so tired." And for the first time in years, I didn't see the version of Dylan I had resented, the screw-up with excuses and expensive shoes. I saw a boy in a storm without a compass, taught to dodge accountability but never shown how to steer. Later that afternoon, a hospital social worker named Lorna asked to speak with me. We sat in a tiny room lined with faded inspirational posters about courage and hope. Her voice was calm, steady, but her questions pierced deep. How long had Dylan been using? Had my parents been aware of the severity of his condition? Were there other signs of neglect? I answered honestly. Maybe for the first time. About the money. About Grandpa. About the things I'd ignored for years because love told me to be quiet. She scribbled in her notebook, then looked up. "Brooke, what you're describing, this isn't just dysfunction. It's a form of systemic financial and elder abuse. And Dylan's situation warrants involuntary treatment if he's a danger to himself or others." It felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know I was suffocating in. "But if you choose to act," she added gently, "you'll need to be prepared. People rarely react well to losing control." I nodded, though my pulse thundered. I knew what she meant. My parents had always held the reins. Always rewritten the narrative to make themselves look noble. Challenging that version of events wasn't just about truth, it was about survival. That night, Grandpa was discharged from the hospital and brought back to the house. I cooked us both dinner, real food, warm and nourishing, and we ate in the quiet comfort of people who didn't need to fill silence with small talk. But even with him home, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage after the curtain fell, spotlights off, lies exposed. After dinner, I sat at the old kitchen table with Grandpa's paperwork. Property deeds. Bank statements. Letters unopened. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part, deeper, steadier, began to make a plan. "Hazel used to draw maps when she was little," Grandpa said softly, referring to me by the nickname only he still used. "Treasure hunts. Routes out of make-believe danger." I looked up. "This isn't make-believe." He smiled, tired but proud. "No. But I think you're still drawing maps." The next morning brought the call I didn't expect. Not from my parents. From Madison. "They're planning to sell Grandpa's house," she said without preamble. "Without his consent. I got wind of it from a mutual friend in real estate. Your mom's already been asking about quick turnaround agents." My skin went cold. "They can't," I said, panic tightening around my ribs. "His name's still on the deed. They're betting no one will stop them in time." It hit me then. They knew they were losing control. Knew Dylan's overdose changed everything. And now they were trying to cash out before I could solidify power of attorney. Before I could expose them. That evening, Dylan was stable enough for conversation. I sat on the edge of his hospital bed with a folder in my hands. Inside, brochures for Riverstone recovery, a signed notarized medical power of attorney from Grandpa, and a copy of the house deed. "Things are about to get messy," I told him. "And I can't fight this alone." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he reached out, weak fingers curling over mine. I don't want to go back to how things were, he whispered. Then don't, I said. Help me stop it. We stared at each other. Two broken kids forged in a house of borrowed lies. Outside the room, I could hear someone shouting. Loud. Female. Familiar. Dylan's grip tightened. That's Mom. When do we stop calling it love and start calling it harm? She was already in the hallway, voice sharp, eyes blazing, with a lawyer by her side. And she had no idea the war she was walking into. The hallway split open with the force of my mother's voice. Where is he? She barked at the nurse's station. Her resort sundress hung awkwardly on her frame, too bright for the clinical lighting, too cheery for the crisis she pretended not to see. Behind her, my father trailed like a misplaced accessory, eyes down, hands stuffed into the pockets of his golf shorts. I stepped into the hall just in time to watch the nurse point toward Dylan's room. My mother spotted me instantly. Brooke. Her voice flattened. We need to talk. No, I said calmly. We need to listen. For once. She looked stunned. Like I'd just spoken in a language she forgot how to understand. Inside Dylan's room, he sat upright, legs covered with a hospital blanket, looking tired but sober. Present. My mother rushed to his side as if her presence could undo everything. My sweet boy, she crooned. You look pale. Have they been feeding you? Dylan flinched, then leaned away. Mom, he said quietly. I'm not going home. What do you mean? She looked at me like I'd planted the idea in his brain. You're coming home where we can take care of you. You haven't taken care of anyone, Dylan said. His voice was quiet, but unshaking. Not Grandpa. Not Brooke. Not me. My father shifted uncomfortably. This isn't the time for blame. Then when? I said. Because it sure wasn't last week when you left Grandpa with no food or medicine. Or the week before when you emptied my savings account. You gave us access, my mom snapped. When I was 17. You're being dramatic. We were always going to pay it back. With what? I asked. Your timeshare points? The kitchen remodel you financed with Grandpa's money? Or maybe the private school tuition you never finished paying because Dylan got expelled? The room fell still. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, ruptured by truths that had been shoved under years of rugs. Dylan looked between us. I'm going to Riverstone tomorrow. They've already started the intake process. My mother's face paled. Honey, no. That's a facility for addicts, he finished for her. That's what I am. And I'm not going to die pretending I'm not. The words hit like a low, slow thunder. I looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't look like a kid pretending to be lost. He looked like someone who'd stopped running. You don't understand how this looks, she said, voice cracking. People will talk. Our church, your father's office. This isn't about them, Grandpa Walter's voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. He stood in the doorway, gripping his walker like a staff, eyes clear despite the exhaustion painted into every wrinkle. This is about what you've done. And what you've failed to do. My mom took a step back. Dad. You stole from your daughter. You abandoned me. You raised a boy by shielding him from every consequence until he nearly died from your protection. I was trying to help, she whispered. You were trying to control, Grandpa replied. And now you've lost it? I was grieving my whole life, she snapped. My mother died young, I had no one. I didn't know how to raise a son without breaking him. And so you broke your daughter instead, I said. The words weren't cruel. Just true. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't soften. She'd cried before. Tears are only redemptive if they're followed by change. I've signed over power of attorney, Grandpa said. To Brooke. She's selling the house. My father finally spoke. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking better than I have in years, Grandpa said. And I'm done being a passive player in a story you two keep rewriting. The lawyer my mother brought in remained silent through it all, looking increasingly uncomfortable, flipping through papers he never referenced. You can challenge it in court, I said, but you'll lose. And if you try, I will file criminal charges for financial exploitation and elder neglect. You wouldn't do that, she said, almost begging now. I already started, I said. And I've documented everything. My father's face sagged. He suddenly looked old. Not in the way Grandpa looked old with grace and history, but in the way someone looks when they realize their performance doesn't work anymore. My mother sat down slowly in the visitor chair, the one she hadn't noticed when Dylan was unconscious. Her shoulders fell forward. What do you want? She whispered. To punish us? I took a breath. I want Dylan to get better. I want Grandpa safe. I want my savings returned, even if it takes 20 years. And I want you to stop pretending love means never being told no. She didn't answer. Not then. Maybe not ever. That was 4 months ago. Grandpa now lives in a beautiful assisted living community just 10 minutes from my apartment. He's made friends with a retired jazz drummer named Lonnie, and he goes to trivia night every Thursday. Dylan's in week 12 of his program. Some days he calls. Some days he doesn't. But he's trying. Last week he mailed me a sketch he drew in art therapy, 2 hands reaching for each other across a chasm. He titled it Repair. Mom and Dad haven't called. I hear they're back from Cabo, selling furniture on Facebook Marketplace. I got the first payment on the repayment plan 2 weeks ago, $100. Not much, but I cashed it anyway. I still don't know if we're a family anymore. But I do know this, sometimes, the bravest kind of love is saying no more. And sometimes, you become the adult you always needed, not just for yourself but for everyone too scared to name the truth. What part of this story stayed with you the most? If you loved this journey, comment 100 below. Tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from around the world. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching Life Stories.